Papers, Please is a dark and depressing game about paperwork. The game takes place in a communist dystopia. Or does it? The aesthetics of the game are certainly based upon communist societies, and if you look at the surface level characteristics of the society in which you live, it seems clear-cut. However, if you look carefully, the idea that the game is trying to be anti-communist is a bit of a misconception. Yes, the game is, in a sense, anti-communist, but it's so much more than just that. The game wants you to look beyond the black and white communist versus capitalism. It wants you to realize that both of these things can be flawed. In order to understand this, let's break down the elements of the game. Papers, Please begins with you winning the lottery, the October Labor Lottery. What you have won is a job at the Greston border checkpoint. An apartment will be provided for you and your family, a Class 8 dwelling. Seems pretty communist to me, but I'll come back to this later. For now, what you will do at your job is examine people's paperwork and follow the guidelines set by the government, Arstotzka, in order to determine whether someone will be allowed into the country or denied. The rules set by the government vary from day to day. On day 1, only Arstotzkan citizens can return home, so the job is fairly simple. Allow all citizens and deny all foreigners. These rules are probably not posted publicly, since there are many non-citizens who wait in line for hours only to be turned away. At the end of the day, you are given a certain amount of money based on how many people you have managed to process through. Then, living costs are deducted. You have 4 family members, a wife, son, uncle, and mother-in-law. You have no choice whether or not to pay rent, but you can choose whether or not to pay for food, heating, and medicine. That is, if you're willing to let your family members suffer. So of course, you would be inclined to pay for all of these things. Any leftover money is put into savings. By the end of day 1, if you're anything like me, you didn't really manage to process a lot of passports, since this was the first time you've ever played the game. It takes some time to get used to the system and its rules. One could chalk this up to being a feature of games, that you need to get used to the controls. But I don't really think it's that unrealistic to think that someone would actually experience this during the first day on the job. As a consequence of being slow, you don't get enough credits to cover all your expenses. You'll need to dip into your savings, which are not much, only 30 credits. One bad day wipes out these savings entirely. This conveys a clear message. You need to be fast, not only for yourself, but also for the sake of your family. On day 2, the border is open to foreigners, just need to make sure that the passports are valid. Now it's time to redeem the failures of the first day. Speed, speed, speed. You need to feed your family after all. However, there's a catch. If you make a mistake, you get a citation. The first 2 citations are warnings, but if you get more than 2, they start to penalize you. 5, 10, and many more credits. You can't afford to make mistakes. Making mistakes leads to the same fate as being slow. This need to be as accurate as possible constricts how quickly you can process the passports. To make matters worse, day 2 is interrupted by a terrorist attack. Reflecting upon this system, a few things caught my attention. The job lottery and the state-provided housing are in fact very communist, but hardly anything else about the system actually seems to follow up on this. The apartment isn't really state-provided after all, since you still have to pay a significant part of your salary for it. Food isn't much better. And most striking of all is that healthcare isn't provided. If you can't afford medicine for your sick family members, that's on you. You didn't process enough passports. Everything is on you. Process as many passports as you can, but don't make any mistakes. If your family dies, that's your fault. Follow the rules, no matter how demanding they can be. And demanding they do become. Due to the terrorist attack on day 2, now foreigners need a valid ticket to enter. Soon enough, the ticket becomes a full document. Citizens will also need an ID card. Before long, if someone is a foreigner entering for work, they also need a work permit. After another terrorist attack, if someone is Colchian, they also need to be randomly searched. The duties become overwhelming. You will slip up. Arstotzka has a zero-tolerance policy for delinquency. Your family will be sent back to their village. You are under arrest until your debts are paid. A replacement inspector will be found easily. Papers, Please masterfully manages to create a feeling of dread every time a day begins. You find yourself bracing for impact every time you submit a judgment, in fear of hearing a printer hand you a citation. The consequences for everything are grim. It's all on you. Everything comes down to the individual. This is where I think the communist interpretation of the game really fails. The system you live under is brutal and oppressive. For some real historical context, in the Soviet Union, housing was not high quality for sure, and you did have to pay rent. But the rent was a minimal amount. The average monthly salary was around 100 rubles. You had to pay around 10 rubles to maintain your apartment. Nothing like the high rent in Arstotzka. Food was similarly subsidized by the government. I will make this clear. I am not a communist. I am fully aware that the Soviet Union had huge problems. I'm simply pointing out the differences between Arstotzka and actual communism. In fact, what does this system really remind you of? High cost of living is not really a communist country's problem. In fact, that's when communist revolutions tend to happen. Oppressively high rent, lack of social programs, out-of-pocket healthcare. This isn't to say that Arstotzka is the United States one-to-one, because that's certainly not true. I mean to say that we can't dismiss Arstotzka as being completely foreign to us. Arstotzka is the embodiment of authoritarianism rather than any particular economic system. The system breaks you down. You must rebuild yourself into the ideal machine, the perfect worker. You must do it for yourself and for your family. But you aren't a machine. You're a human with emotions, aren't you? Can you ignore their pleas? A man passes through. His documents are all in order, so he goes through. His wife is behind him. The only problem is, she doesn't have all the paperwork she needs. You need to reject her. But if you send her back, they will kill her. She pleads with you. A machine would reject her immediately, without thought. But can you? Do you lack humanity enough to separate a husband and wife, potentially forever? What can you do when your family is relying on you? The choice is yours. Or is it? This is the game's central dilemma. The job you are given is designed this way. The pressure of the system strips away your humanity. Morality is at odds with the economic system. Notice, though, it is all on you, the individual. This is what makes the game not just about communism. It's about governments that don't care for the lives of people and view them as expendable and replaceable. All governments can be like Arstotzka in some ways, when they begin to separate us from our humanity. Think about who exactly is giving you the citations when you make a mistake. I know that it's a game, so the game knows what's right and wrong. But think about in the world. What does it actually mean? Someone is over your shoulder and knows exactly what the right and wrong answers are to your problems. But they would rather stand back and give you citations for not doing your job correctly, rather than sitting down with you and helping you do your job. Punishment for individual failures rather than collective uplifting. Okay, so what? Arstotzka is the embodiment of authoritarianism and stripping humanity away from people. What can be done? Well, try as they might to control you, you still have some autonomy. As you get better at identifying discrepancies, the citations become less about mistakes and allow you to choose to allow people through without penalizing your own family. It is in spite of the machine they want us to become that we can preserve our humanity. Look to your own lives. We may not live in Arstotzka, but we certainly feel the pressure to process our own papers as quickly as possible, because it's all on us, isn't it? Hustle culture has tricked us. You always need to be hustling or you will be left behind. There's a zero-tolerance policy for delinquency. In no way can we uplift and help each other. They break you down and try to make you only think for yourself, follow orders, and not care about the lives of others. We must forego these things. Papers, Please is a fun game, but also a game we can learn from. Look beyond communism versus capitalism and see for yourself. It is authoritarianism that is our enemy. From Stalinist Russia to World War II Germany to the corporations, they all seek to turn us against each other, to control us. Being aware of these things is half the battle. And with that, I think I said what I have to say about the economics of a fictional country. If you have any thoughts, agreements, or disagreements, feel free to comment them down below. I'm open to hearing your ideas. And thank you to my Patreon supporters. If you would like to support the channel, the links are in the description. Thanks for watching, and see you next week.